But my buddy Alex Marvez from FoxSports.com and SiriusXM NFL Radio, he's also a Hall of Fame voter, which makes him extremely valuable for the conversation we've been having for the most part today. Alex, before I ask you the Hall of Fame question, people are saying that I look like a meathead James Vanderbeek. Do you see that at all?
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, but actually it's James Vanderbeek who looks like you. I hope that they get the pecking order right.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying?
I've always thought more Putty from Seinfeld I can see. I don't know about the meathead James Vanderbeek.
Nah, I think it's more James Vanderbeek than Putty, to be honest with you. Putty's had a lot of work done, though. I mean, you're all natural. You know what I mean? And there's something to be said for that. Now, Ross, I don't mean to burst your bubble here. This year, believe it or not, I was not a Hall of Fame voter. I've been a Hall of Fame seat filler in the past. I voted for 8 of the past 9 classes. Did not vote this year, but I am able to talk about this topic, I think, adroitly when it comes to certain people who were excluded on this.
Yeah, okay. So 8 of the last 9 years you've been a voter.
Correct.
So what do you mean you're a seat filler? What does that mean?
Well, here's what happens. You know, when people can't vote, I'm like on Seinfeld, if you bring up a Putty reference. You remember when Kramer was filling in at the Tonys and he had to sit in?
Yeah.
And then Scarsdale Surprise won the Tony, and he got brought up on stage, and he was able to keep the Tony for a little bit, so they realized who he was. That's me in real life. So when someone couldn't vote for the Hall of Fame, they'd be like, yeah, this schlepper's around, bring him in the room. So that's how I got to vote. Also, 2 years as the president of the Pro Football Writers of America, that president's seat has a vote. So I was able to vote for that as well. So I've been in the room. I understand what goes on. And, you know, some people, it's a we want everything now society, right, Ross? You know what I mean? I want to be in now. I want to be in the Hall of Fame now. You know, Fran Tarkenton wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. Can you believe that? Bill Parcells, not a first ballot Hall of Famer. T.O. needs to slow his roll a little bit, man.
So here's the question I have about T.O. I'm sure by now you've heard what Gary Myers said yesterday on the show about T.O. not getting in because he was a divisive player in the locker room, and that the locker room is an extension of the field. So what exactly does the Hall of Fame tell you guys, and do you agree with that? So off the field doesn't count, but locker room does? So what counts and what doesn't?
Do you think that the locker room is a logical extension of the playing field? You know what I mean? I think it is. I think it's different when we go from player to Lawrence Taylor. Okay, who had clearly off-field issues and, you know, wasn't voted in. It was still voted in first ballot, even though he had a major history of drug problems off the field. I mean, that's –
But the thought about the locker room, Alex, just so I'm clear, is that his divisiveness contributed negatively to his teams, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when guys get in trouble with the law and get suspended a game or two, or they get in trouble, that can be, you know, a negative for the team as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe in the case of Eddie DeBartolo, right? You know, I mean, that's something where you look, and that's a weird situation, obviously, as an owner, but eventually, you know, he was forced to walk away from the 49ers, and yet he's still in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, so, you know, look, we can say this. You know, did owners want a pound of flesh from Terrell Owens? You know, I mean, not owners, voters. Did they want a pound of flesh from T.O.? Did they think that, you know what, it's good to humble this guy before he goes in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I can't say that some people don't feel that way. You know, was there that human emotion involved? Sure. You know, there also are great receivers that have had to wait because they're compilers of numbers, right? You know what I mean? In this era, being a 1,000-yard wide receiver, you're not going to get a parade down Main Street, if you understand what I'm saying. It's a different world. So some people will look at it like that, and some people may have thought that Marvin Harrison was more worthy for this year because he had waited. Look, would I have voted for Terrell Owens as a first-ballot Hall of Famer? Probably yes. I'm not in the room, so I can't hear the arguments that are presented, but again, you know, as a presenter as well, and there's something that needs to be pointed out here. I think the job of the presenter isn't so much as to say how great a player is. We all know they're great. That's why they're in the room to be voted upon. What the role of the presenter should be is to be able to protect that player from the slings and arrows of voters who don't think they should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And to me, that's where I'm curious about how this meeting went. And unfortunately, I wasn't in there. And even if I was, I couldn't share those details. But to me, the best presentations are from the guys who are prepared with answers to explain, okay, T.O. was derisive, but then you have stats that back up, well, how derisive was he?
Right.
And you have player testimonials, you know, that say, oh, well, this guy, no, it wasn't bad. You know, hey, it was Donovan's fault, or, oh, it was someone else's fault.
But here's a couple questions for you, Alex. We're talking to Alex Marvez, FoxSports.com, as well as a colleague of mine over at SiriusXM NFL Radio. Do you really think it should be the Hall's job to have a line and to force certain guys to wait in line because they've decided that it's going to go Chris Carter, Andre Reed, Tim Brown, Marvin Harrison, and then T.O.?
Well, part of the problem with that is this: you got 5 people you can vote in at most. That's a tough thing. It isn't like we can vote in as many people as you want, right? You got to vote in 5. And that's what's so tough about this. And then the argument becomes, well, if you vote for this guy, then who are you going to take out from that class of 5? And that class of 5 is pretty darn good, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I think it's a class that the Hall of Fame voters should be proud of. And I think T.O. will be in soon enough.
Yeah, and then here's the one I have even more of a question on. Now, you're pretty connected, but how much do the voters really know about what happened in the locker room? I mean, I think it's a slippery slope, and I've been saying earlier, and you could probably give examples too, Alex, where there are guys that are beloved in communities, touted for their leadership, that I know were not good guys, and vice versa. Guys, everybody thinks a bad guy that was actually a good guy. I think it's very dangerous if the Hall of Fame voters start to hold what a guy did or did not reportedly do in the locker room against them, don't you?
Well, I mean, you have to research it. If you have a question as a voter, it's your responsibility. If you go into that room wondering, or when you first get that ballot, the final 15, and you're wondering about T.O., well, as a voter, it should be incumbent upon you to do the legwork, to talk to people that were there, talk to coaches, talk to people who were around this guy, talk to players. That as a voter, you should be doing your legwork, your research. I'm not saying that everyone does either. It's not like we take a test to become a Hall of Fame voter or anything like that. But that's something as well. Look, it's a flawed process in a lot of ways. I'm not sure if it's even the best process what goes on with this. But it's the process that we have, if you understand. And it's a process that is very slow to change. I think in time you're going to see some things happen. I think we're going to eventually get assistant coaches to be able to go in on some sort of category. They've set up that contributor category right now, which is key. We got the senior committee going to get in guys who, look, Ken Stabler, is he worthy to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame if we passed him over 15 years ago? I don't know.
And then here's the last question, Alex. The bylaws say you can't consider what a guy did off the field. So let's just say, for argument's sake, I mean, Darren Sharper might be a good example, or let's just say Aaron Hernandez, to go very extreme, had 15 amazing years like Shannon Sharp and then was convicted of murder. You guys aren't inducting him.
No, of course not.
So then to say
sounds good on paper.
So then to say what happens off the field should have no bearing is kind of comical, because there's no way you guys would sit in that room and induct Hernandez, just like there's no way they're going to induct Darren Sharper, whether he has a legitimate candidacy or not.
You seem pretty worked up about this.
Well, I just think I don't like when there's a bylaw. I don't like gray area, which the locker room becomes, number one. And I don't like when there's a bylaw that's just simply not true. I don't like rules that just aren't true. I would say this, Alex, we only include what happens inside the white lines, or we include everything and not have this kind of wishy-washy, locker room, et cetera. Really, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for hopping aboard.
Awesome, Ross. Be good.
There he is, Alex Marvez.